This podcast, including all discussions and examples, is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any government agency or company. Today, we sit down with ADS's Vice President of Sales, Ryan Sturgill, as he discusses his time at the Naval Academy, as well as counter-narcotic operations and his transition to a career at ADS. This is From the Dive Shop.
Hi, I'm Hillary Warren, and welcome to From the Dive Shop. I am joined today by my co-host,
Jen Edwards, and we're really excited today to welcome the Vice President of Sales for ADS, Ryan Sturgill.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
There's a lot going on in the world right now. And so we'd like to begin by talking about what we think is probably the most important thing happening in our country today, basketball. Ryan Sturgill is very possibly the tallest person ever born in the history of the world. As a matter of fact, would you do me a favor? Would you guys stand up just real quick?
Sure, let's do
Our
it.
camera people are going to kill us, but let's just do this. I want to see Hillary and Ryan side by side.
Nothing at all.
No heels.
Nothing at all.
There we go.
There we are. All right. It's true.
We are super excited. Ryan is a graduate of the Naval Academy and played basketball for the Naval Academy. So, rather than talk about the really important things that we do here at ADS, I want to hear a little bit about that.
Oh, wow. Well, let's see. Where do I start? Well, for starters, I think it's more accurate to say I was on the basketball team. Yeah.
Oh, no. Were you a bench warmer?
Spent most of the time on the team in the position.
Is this a water
you
boy
see me right
situation?
now. Not a water boy. No, basketball was very much the majority of my life in middle school up through high school. It was certainly a big part of what got me into the Naval Academy. A lot of military service on my dad's side of the family. Always had a respect for that. And I think whenever the Naval Academy became an opportunity for me, evaluated that amongst another couple of offers, and it was sort of a no-brainer. I played for a very, very, very competitive high school basketball program. We were number 2 in the country my senior year, and so I think I went into it the basketball side of the Naval Academy with a big head and thinking I was
big fish, small pond
totally
situation.
Thought that. I'm like, oh, hey, listen, Naval Academy is, lower Division 1. This should be no problem. I'm going to come in here and run this place. And wow, that was the exact opposite.
Bench.
I ran the bench for, I ran the bench for only was on the team for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that it was, coming into the Naval Academy and the enormity of you're about to make a commitment to your country that is bigger than yourself. And that, I got to be honest with you, the first year, I struggled with that because it was so big and I just didn't think about it. And I don't think I was, it was just such a culture shock. I can remember the morning my father dropped me off at the Naval Academy. We were eating breakfast at a Denny's. And I just kind of felt really happy and confident.
Is that because you had the moons over Miami?
So that's always in the top 3 choices. I just went with whatever the scramble was of the day, I think, or the skillet. They're the skillets, right? Anyway, and I felt really good. I felt really confident. I'm like, Dad, you know what? I think I'm ready to do this. It's scary and all, but I'm so excited. And he was just he was so happy and everything else. And so that first day they drop you off, it's like being dropped off at boot camp, and they shave your head and they give you all this stuff and they drag you around. And at the end of the day, you do an oath, and then you get to meet with your folks for about 15 minutes before they take you back for the next 8 weeks and beat you up. And I was a blubbering mess. I didn't know what I had. I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea. This place is different than what I thought. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So through the course of those 8 weeks, it was sort of a very much an emotional journey for me more than anything. I mean, there's the whole getting used to that military structure, not having any time on your own ever. That was just such an adjustment for me that I didn't think about. But then as I think I was one of those people that sort of gradually kind of came to terms with things and started to sort of accept the challenge and actually eventually get excited about it. Looking back on things, I think I really wish I could have made the basketball part work just for like a pride thing. But I think the day, I remember it was the evening that I made the decision that it was probably a good idea to just leave the team. I was on a summer cruise, not like a cruise ship, like a summer training. And we did 2 weeks out on an amphibious landing dock, right actually out of Norfolk. And
Paradise.
They had us in enlisted berthing where there's like 4 racks floor to ceiling. It's disgusting and tight quarters. And I'm sitting there, thinking about things. And I'm like, this place would be a lot easier if I wasn't playing basketball anymore. Because I know I'm not going to be playing basketball after I graduate college, right? I didn't have any visions of, trying to play overseas or anything like that. So I just said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And so when preseason training started, my junior year, I just told the coach, I'm like, I just, I think it's time for me to sort of just focus on the important stuff here. And let's be honest. I was riding the bench, so he wasn't upset.
So my understanding of college sports, I'm not sure if this is apparent, but I was not a college athlete.
I don't know. You could have been.
Theater,
you never know.
Theater is its own sport.
It's an active pursuit.
Yeah. So it requires a ton of discipline. So not only are you on the basketball team at the Naval Academy, so you've got kind of these 2 very high discipline spaces at the same time, where you're coming from high school. I'm assuming you had kind of a normal high school experience. You've got a lot of, a relative amount of freedom, as much as a 17, 18-year-old can.
I did not.
No?
No.
You had very strict parents?
Well, I had strict parents, sure. But they afforded me, actually, once I got to about high school, they afforded me actually an enormous amount of freedom because I think I had built up a lot of trust.
Oh, okay.
I was relatively straight-laced in high school. The basketball program that I mentioned earlier might as well have been the military to an extent. The coach was, it was a 11 and a half months a year, 4 hours a day, 7 days a week commitment.
Wow.
And it was very much like the military. As a matter of fact, that part made parts of the Naval Academy quite easy. Like actually the pure military training part of the Naval Academy, my high school basketball experience 100% was the best thing I could have done for preparation because my coach very much treated us like his own little army. And it was intense. It was lots of screaming. It was lots of, him beating the crap out of your ego and having to sort of ignore the nasty things being said at you in order to still focus and get done what you needed to get done. I consider myself very fortunate because that part of the Naval Academy was a lot easier for me once I got through the emotional trauma.
Can you give us a little bit of history of your time in the Navy following your time at the Naval Academy?
Sure. I think it's worth mentioning that when I was at the Naval Academy, I was on the Marine Corps track.
No way.
I was. You do the month in Quantico prior to your senior year, and then you spend a month out in the Fleet Marine Force. It was fun. It was awesome. And then you go back to school and get your pre-commissioning physical. And then they told me, you're too tall to do anything, related to flight. I wanted to do Marine Corps Air. So you can't fly anything. And you would have to sign a waiver if you wanted to go to Marine Corps ground because you're an inch over the height limit. And
I'm sorry.
That sounds really disappointing.
The Marine Corps has a height limit?
Yeah. Actually, the Navy and the Marine Corps have a height limit. So it's called the restricted line. So if you're 6'6" or below, you're unrestricted. You can go do whatever it is you're qualified to do. Because every different community has their own entry criteria. If you're over that, then you have a restricted line designation, and you have a different set of communities to choose from.
Fascinating.
So you're 6'7"?
I was.
Okay. You were?
Yeah. No, I still am. I'm just kidding. Life has beaten me down a little bit.
And then you came to ADS.
And then I came to ADS, and I lost about an inch and a half. So that was sort of a bummer.
Yeah. What did that feel like?
It was frustrating. It was
Yeah.
frustrating. You go to the Naval Academy. Half the guys are there because they watched Top Gun when they were a kid. I mean, let's be honest. That's the sexy stuff to do. And then whenever you come into that part of that indoctrination that I talked about, your plebe year, it's heavy Marine Corps influence. And I actually, like I told you, I kind of, really kind of bought into things. That was a big part of it. And I don't know. I didn't think that maybe at the end of those 4 years, after experiencing a lot of different interfaces with the Marine Corps, or as many as we could. I don't know. I didn't know if maybe that culture was right for me. And so I said, okay, well, that stinks. What do I have to choose from in the restricted line community? So you have 4 at the time. I think it's a whole different ballgame now. But you have supply corps, which is logistics, intel, cryptology, which is like code breaking, and then aviation maintenance duty. So I said, well, again, being very 22-year-old, being very superficial, I thought, well, intelligence is where I want to go. That's the cool thing. You can tell somebody you're an intelligence officer. And my grades weren't amazing at the Naval Academy. And everything is based on class rank as far as what you get to pick, what community you get to pick. So they only had 2 billets open, and the top 2 got those. And so I got supply corps. And the morning that you get the envelope, they give you a little envelope that tells you what community you're going to go into. It was very funny. We were all sitting in this classroom on our floor in the dorm, and they're handing out envelopes, and everybody's celebrating. And it's like, hey, Sean, what'd you get? Hey, I got Navy flight. Hey, Matt, what did you get? Surface warfare. Hey, Ryan, what'd you get? Supply corps. That's cool. Hey, Brett, what did you get? Special warfare. I was kind of bummed about that, right? And again, that's me, honestly, being very superficial, not really just focusing on this is an opportunity to serve. I think that I struggled with that at the time, and I just thought, okay, well, look, worst case scenario, I'm gonna get some business exposure while I'm able to also serve and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. 2 great things that I'm proud to be able to do, and so that's how I approached it. And I'm very very thankful for my my military time. I did just shy of 8 years. It's funny, getting selected or getting placed in the restricted line community because of my height precluded me from being a surface warfare officer. So a surface warfare officer that's the community that drives and fights the ships, right? I don't know if you've been on a ship lately, but they're not designed for tall people.
I have,
Yeah.
and I do very well on them.
You would do
yes,
great.
I
You
don't
could-
have to bend down.
You could do
at
a
all.
full wind sprint down any passageway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
If I did that, I'd be in the hospital.
Yes.
You'd definitely be a couple inches shorter.
Well, I mean, everybody said, like, man, you're going to have back problems when you get off of this ship. And I was like, no, well, sure enough, I do. But no, it was, so yeah, they still stuck me on a ship. But I am very, 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 very thankful for that. Jen and I had the luxury of being able to go down to Fort Bragg last week together. And we had dinner with the team that was down there. And it was really nice of her to ask me, what my favorite, port visits were and stuff like that. Those kinds of experiences are, unique, once in a lifetime kinds of things. And I mean, on that first ship, I did 1 deployment prior to 9/11 and another after. So obviously dramatically different deployments. Operational tempo and the mission was dramatically different. So that was fantastic. 3 years on that ship. From there, went to the Navy Yard to take part in an acquisition and contracting internship with Naval Sea Systems Command. So that's the systems command that basically designs, procures, sustains, and retires all surface and subsurface weapons platforms, right? So a ship is really just a weapons platform, just like an airplane is, or an aircraft is really just a weapons platform in the military, if we're, speaking with the way they manage it and classify it. So it was everything from actual shipbuilding and ship buying taking place at NAVSEA to weapons, so torpedoes, missiles, guns, and then also sensors. A lot of sensors. So sonars, radars, all of the like, and then also pure maintenance tail sustainment. So in other words, what's it going to take for us to sustain these ships and keep them in the fight for the next 20 to 25 years from a parts perspective, engine sustainment, engine advancement, ripping and replacing when they're in the shipyards, all that. So for those 2 years that I was there, it was honestly, I don't remember much of it because it was a phenomenal fast-paced exposure to how the Navy buys. I was on 2 different programs while I was there. First, I was on the NATO Sea Sparrow program, very unique because you're buying on behalf of the rest of NATO. So every decision is made by a steering committee, and that was interesting to watch for first real exposure to bureaucracy. Very interesting. And then I shifted over there to the torpedo program office support. And so we helped actually design and build the Mark 54 torpedo, which actually the Navy still uses today, which is kind of great. A little bit more advanced, obviously, than it was. And then from there, then I say it was a blur because I was getting my graduate degree on nights and weekends at George Washington. And I mean, if I had to do it all over again, I wish I could have pressed pause on my Navy time and then did my grad school full time, because as it was, that experience was very much I didn't get a lot of the networking side of business school. That's honestly 50% of a good business school experience is the connections you make while you're there. It was very much just look, what portion of this term project do I have to do? Can you just give it to me so I can just go off in a hole somewhere and do it and hand it in because I'm exhausted. But we got it done, right? And so after that point, you have to serve at least 2 more years as a payback for the internship. So I'm thinking, let's get out to San Diego. My first tour was here, by the way. That first ship, it was
in
here.
Virginia Beach?
Yeah, it was out of Norfolk. Yeah.
Okay.
And let's get out to California. That's where all the cool things are. It's where the fun things happen. Again, thinking like a 20-year-old, and I wanted to get a SEAL team supply job, and because you're doing cool things, you're close to the fight, you feel like you're making a difference, even as a supply guy, and then also I know their work hours are early, but then they also stop early too. Right. So
would that require you to go to Buds as
no,
well?
No.
Okay, you're supporting the
You're
SEAL
supporting
teams.
the SEAL
Got
teams.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, definitely. It's a good thing it's not a SEAL in the room. They would have thrown up.
It sounds like you do really like to try and do things as hard as possible. So,
you know what?
basketball in the Naval Academy and grad school and enlisted at the same time.
I was definitely born mostly Irish. So yeah, kind of glutton for punishment in a lot of ways. But yeah, no. And so I wanted to try and do the SEAL team supply job. Thought that was lined up. Last second, they said no. We actually had to do a hot fill, meaning they had to get somebody in the position immediately because they had the last person fulfilling the role have to take off somewhere else. So they said, okay, listen, you're still going to go to San Diego, but you're going to go on a ship. And I was like, how about San Diego, not a ship?
How does the Navy like it when you go, how about not?
Right, I know. They don't. They don't, actually. So the detailer, that's the person that basically assigns the jobs throughout. They're the total force management part of the Navy. They call them detailers in the Navy. Every other service has a different name for them, but they're all doing the same thing. And the Navy's personnel headquarters, randomly, is in Millington, Tennessee. I know it's sort of random, right? It was an old World War II air base that they used for training that they converted into this basically massive
and the Navy thought,
facility.
since this is nice and close to the coast.
Nice and close to the coast. All
right.
the water.
On
right.
the water. Not at all.
The closest water is right by downtown Memphis. That's the closest water. So everybody says, hey, what is Millington? What'd they say there? And so he said, listen, I got a frigate in San Diego. The department head needs to leave, so you're going to go there and be the supply officer, the supply department head. And I know frigates, they're small, they're old. And I was like, how about any ship but a frigate? And they said, nope, no, how about a frigate in San Diego? And I said, well, all right, listen, I know in your little black book there in my file, you're going to write Sturgill denied orders to sea if I deny these, and that's going to hurt me if I decide to stay in. So just write in the book, Sturgill took one for the team, and I'll go, Because I kind of knew I was going to get out. I think, well, in the Navy, they always say, never make a career decision on a shore tour, never make a life decision on a sea tour. And I think that's a really sage advice, and I think, did I follow it? Sorta. During my tour at the Navy Yard, I looked at what all the senior officers were doing, all the senior supply officers. And, sort of I knew I was going to be in the contracting career path within the Supply Corps. They had a few different career paths: business financial management, integrated logistics support, contracting and acquisition, which was mine, and then fuels management. And I just sort of looked what they did on a day-to-day basis, the things they were involved in. And again, I look, everything's great in the rearview mirror, or hindsight's always 20/20, as they say. Like, I look back, and those guys are actually doing some really, really cool, really big things that, had I, done those, I would sit here and tell you I was very proud of doing that as well. But I was, thinking like somebody who was, in their mid to late 20s, who was, not, I didn't have a wife, didn't have a family, didn't know my wife at the time. I was very self-centered. And so I was just thinking about what's the coolest thing I can do. And I thought, like, that just didn't sound cool. It didn't look cool to me. And again, that's a recurring theme in my life. So I said, I think I'm probably going to get out. But you still have to submit papers to separate, for you request your discharge. So I went out to the frigate in San Diego. It was very much an old ship. It had like a nasty port list when it just sits in the harbor and everything. It was falling apart, and it had been converted from a ship that was part of a battle group, with an aircraft carrier and destroyers and cruisers and everything else, to be a ship that's actually independent, and it was a counter-narcoterrorism ship. So that was also very cool, like, to be able to go serve on that mission. It's funny, Brent Gott, right, our Navy Deputy Director, he was the air boss of a helo that was on the exact same ship as me a year after I left.
No way.
Yeah,
he was one of our first guests.
I've seen it. It was a wonderful podcast. You guys did great.
And
you looked great.
Amazing.
You guys looked great.
Thank you.
I wasn't in that one. So.
I thought it was you and Patrick. All three. No, you were on the Creighton one.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
Anyway, so you go down the coast and you start burning circles off the coast of Ecuador and Colombia, and you wait for a drug runner to come by, and then you chase him down for about a day, and you take a lot of drugs. And
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Sorry. You don't take a lot of drugs. That's frowned upon. You recover a lot of drugs from that ship and put them in your cargo hold until you can get ashore and have them turned over to the DEA.
I don't believe you as much as I should.
Right. Yeah, but that was crazy. I mean, it's very much like you see in the movies. So much so, it was weird. If you've ever seen the first 8 minutes of Bad Boys 2, 100% the same. They have a lot of technology. They are in speedboats, and they are 1,000% faster than the Navy ships, but they don't have the fuel. So what you do is, when you catch one coming through, you just sort of point the bow at them, and you just trail them for about 24 hours, and then they always run out of fuel. And then you pull alongside, and the Coast Guard law enforcement detachment, takes them down and pulls everything off, and that's how it works. And then when you get it, it's these massive bales of pure cocaine. It's all packaged with certain images depending on where in the country was probably going to go. That was like, I can't believe I'm seeing this right now.
Packaged
kind of thing.
With images. What is that?
Yeah. One, it'll be like an ace of spades on another one, or like a swastika on another package, or a horse on another. It's really crazy and weird.
Based
probably
on
cartels, based on the gangs that were going to circulate it.
Fascinating.
Got a crazy education on all of that through our our Coast Guard partners that were on the ship. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. You do that, then you go through the Panama Canal. Also another didn't think this was going to happen in my life. This is kind of cool. You go through the Panama Canal. You do some of the same stuff in the Caribbean. You pull into Mayport, Florida to fix your ship because ships just get beat up just by being out, right? And spent about 2 weeks there. Saw my first Georgia-Florida game while I was there. Yeah, it's great. And then you come back out and just sort of come back through the canal and do some more of that stuff and come back home. And it was definitely a hard 6 months. There's actually, unfortunately, there was migrant rescue that we had to perform a few times where, unfortunately, because the economy is terrible down in South and Central America, folks will give their life savings to somebody who owns a boat, and they'll overload it with people, families. Sometimes those boats are also running drugs as well, which unfortunately we found that sort of a scenario. But we came upon a boat that had about 180 people that was sinking, and so we had to take 180 people on board the ship, feed them, try and find places for them to lay down or to sleep. It was awful and amazing at the same time, just to see the conditions they were living in, and thinking about what's going to happen to them. So pretty much we pulled into a couple of different ports in Central America consistently: Panama City, Panama, Guatemala. We even pulled into El Salvador once. At those points of entry, there's going to be somebody from that host nation waiting with a couple of buses, and they're just going to drive them back to where they came from.
What a great unexpected experience, right? You had this vision of getting on this sideways listing, old piece of garbage, scow, basically, and you ended up having, it sounds like probably a transformational experience.
Oh, without question. No, I mean, without question. I think whenever you're focused on anything, whether it be building your career, a sport,
what's cool,
the military, if you're focused on everything, you lose sight of the big picture. You lose sight of your place in the world. You lose sight of the fact of how good you have it, and so I think whenever those memories pop up in my head, it's I need to take a second and step aside, kind of. If I'm in the middle of a bunch of people, I'll take a second to step aside because it is just that sort of humbling. Humbling is the first word I can think of, but I mean, that's probably the best word to use to describe it. It was something I couldn't believe that I was seeing or a part of, but also, felt pretty amazing to be a part of it as well, just because, 180 people would have died.
Yeah.
Right? But the crazy part, Hillary, is that happens every time a ship goes on one of those deployments.
Something transformational like that to some young kid.
Well, it is transformational 100%, but I'm telling you, they all come back with 14 to 15 tons of cocaine and 100 to 300 migrants saved. Every single deployment. And it's still happening today.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
It's incredible. It's also unfortunate.
It's unfortunate, but I think that a lot of people think that service means defense, and it does for sure. Yeah. But sometimes it also is these.
I'll tell you, most of the time
rescue. Most of the time.
Yeah, well, especially in peacetime, right? I mean, it's almost like that's a debatable topic nowadays based on all the things going on.
For sure. World, yeah, right? This couldn't be more topical.
Yeah, but regardless of whether you're in the middle of actual wartime or peacetime, that kind of mission is always going on. Yeah, and that's, our units that are not deploying to a war zone, they will probably deploy to go help to do a humanitarian assistance sort of a mission.
I don't think we hear that phrase humanitarian aid, and it has this, for most of us, thankfully for most of us, it has this sort of vague connotation to it. And when we talk to folks like you who have served in those real life capacities, seeing people face to face who are facing these kind of traumas, it's extraordinary. And it's some of why we're doing this podcast is it's great for us to talk about the defense industry and help educate our partners and friends about what we do and what we're, trying to accomplish. But I think the bigger thing is to just hear the stories from folks that really have been on a boat with 180 migrants who were in a sinking ship. So we say this, it's become trite, but I'll say it for the 9 millionth time and I'll never stop. Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you for caring.
Yeah, thank you.
It's hard not to care when we actually can hear about it, and more people need to hear about it. So it's real cool.
Well, I mean, again, like I said, like everybody's doing it, right?
Yeah.
Anybody that has gone on an extended deployment in the Navy alone, and then across all the services, that like the amount of service, like just like you couldn't put it better, the amount of service that happens from military service is usually unexpected and unanticipated, but it's real. It's going on, right now somewhere.
Would you say that was the majority of your service? Was that kind of thing?
The first ship, no, because those deployments were to the Persian Gulf. So that was a real military mission. My second tour was very much an administrative, because it's procurement, it's big dollar contracting. The last tour was 100%. That was the mission. It was stop the drugs, save the people. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So very cool. So very happy to close out my Navy time with that kind of an experience. The last year of that time was spent. The last 7 or 8 months were spent in a shipyard, which that is a whole other just blow your hair back. Sort of an experience. You don't think about the shipbuilding industry, but also like commerce, right? The ship repair, ship maintenance monster is something that you can't even comprehend from the size and the complexity of it, but it's also easy to understand that despite the size of it, despite the shipyard resources that we have as a country, that it's so overly complex that if a ship will go into a shipyard and doesn't get properly managed, a lot of times you go into a shipyard and it's not your ship's force that's doing the work, it's contractors and shipyard employees.
Right.
There's so many different things happening at the same time, and 24 hours a day. Those things are 24-hour-a-day operations. If you don't have eyes on what's going on, you can leave the shipyard in worse condition than whenever you went in. And so that was very much an eye opener. I did a shipyard period here on the Normandy whenever I was there for those 3 years, right in the middle of those 3 years. And then on my last ship, we did a 6 or 7 month availability in that shipyard, and it was, it's always eye opening and also very interesting. I would say more interesting than anything, just the complexity of everything, the way they're, the way it's like a master class in project management. Like Gantt charts for miles. So that was very interesting and humbling too, just because the people that do that, the people that work in that arena are I think are special as well.
Well, gosh, Hillary, I don't know about you, but certainly all of this clearly leads into a career in sales. It's super obvious. That's where you landed. So how did that happen?
Great question. Great question. When you're getting out of the military, if you don't have a specific career field that you might have specialized in, like if I didn't get an engineering degree at the Naval Academy, which you really should try and do that if you go to the Naval Academy. I got an economics degree. And so I still say this so all those foundations that we interface with, like the Honor Foundation, all the transitioning military into the professional world types of activities that we do, I say the same thing to all of them. I say, listen, this is going to sound really corny. Go get one of those cheesy personality test books like StrengthsFinder 2.0. Just go get it. Are you fans?
We did those on
Are
the
you
team
fans?
last year.
Did,
We're
the best thing in the world. Because it'll tell you things about yourself that you might not realize.
What's your number one thing? Do you know off the
Fixer.
top of I'm an activator.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I think I might have been an activator as well.
I can see that happening.
Can we rename the podcast to The Activator?
That would be great. That'd be great. Yeah, no, fixer, but, because of that, goal-oriented, relatively extroverted, although I actually I kind of a waffle in between. They're like, not a pure E.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah, like I can be an I sometimes, depending on what's going on. But I definitely, I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy learning about people. And so because of that, they were like, well, listen, sales is something you should really look into. And there were a couple different companies. They specialize in junior military officer placement. I went through the interview boot camps with two different organizations, and they basically boot camp you on interviews for like 2 days, and then it's 2 full days of interviews. Like I'm talking 18 interviews in 2 days with companies that are looking to hire you on at entry level, either entry level sales or entry level management positions. I wound up with an opportunity with lots of medical device sales companies. Did a lot of ride-along, saw a lot of people get sliced open in emergency rooms and surgery centers. Was very interesting. But then I also had an opportunity with software sales at Oracle. That was back here, back in Reston, about 15 minutes from where I was from. I thought that, the transition out of the Navy was, it wasn't as traumatic as my entry into the Navy, but it was kind of like, it's a big thing. Like you really, you lose a lot of hair over it. And so I thought like there certainly weren't as many job opportunities in the West Coast, especially coming from military, obviously defense heavy in the capital region. So, Oracle, big, highly successful software company. So they have a big, very competent sales force. And those folks really sold it hard. And so I said, okay, you got me. And I showed up and they said, okay, here's a headset and a computer. Start pounding the phones. And I was like, wait a minute, I thought I was going to be in front of people and start shaking hands and really start, moving and shaking. They're like, nope, have a seat. So, okay, I'm like, okay, well, this is, okay, all right. This is not exactly what I thought I was going to be doing, but cool, whatever.
Was it like cold calling?
Yeah, it was cold calling.
Yeah.
And it was I found out after the fact, it was a position they had tried a few times before and they weren't successful. And I was like, whoa, that's not a good sign. But they said, but listen, here's the thing. We've got a team of people that call on the DOD, and they had it very loosely set up. It was basically like, here's 5 guys that are field reps that call on the Army with no clarity on who calls on what. So it was like a dogfight to watch those field reps kind of like try and kill each other. And then I was supporting most of them. There were 2 of us. So they were going after the big deals. I was there to support them with quoting and things like that for the big deals, but I was supposed to find my own deals too. And so really hard. I was really not good at it at first. And was able to work a couple smaller opportunities, bigger for me for my position, but smaller for the outside guys. And then I also noticed that what they called the national security team, that's basically the team that services the intel community, had much more of a steady revenue stream, and they had an opening. So I shifted over there. I'm like, that's sort of what I'm talking about. And it's, but what I found was that's a really hard customer to call on because they don't do cold calls. They allowed me the flexibility to do sort of like a hybrid, where I was able to get out in front of people and if I set the meeting up from my chair, I could go do it at the place. That was sort of the deal.
Okay, so on the spot.
Yes, ma'am.
You've been in sales for a long time.
You've
been in sales for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And cold calling, I know I've got great cold calling stories. What's the hardest, weirdest? Give us one good one. Give us one good, really weird customer interaction that you had.
So, and it's funny, when I first got here, I talked to Brady Osborne and Brandy Panicia to talk to them about their experiences because they call in the agency, and it was a similar situation. So the customer called me up. He wouldn't give me his actual name. He told me he needed to buy a certain number of licenses for the software program, and that he needed them shipped, somewhere elsewhere. And I said, at first I thought it was like, this guy's clearly not, he's a scam artist or something, right? And then, I looked back in our CRM and I'm like, okay, he's an actual contact. Uh-oh. But he wouldn't tell me, he wouldn't tell me very key things in order for me to like actually make a quote for him. And also like to book the order. Like he just wouldn't tell me anything. And we got like, not in a screaming match, but it was like an argument. And he was like, why don't you understand? I do this every 3 years. Like I need these licenses in order for the systems to talk to each other. And I'm like, I understand that. I can't, So that's the first one that pops into my head. Mostly it was just getting hung up on. That was pretty consistent.
I want something, but I refuse to tell you what it is.
Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute. This is that's the first one. But and Brady and Brandy have run into the same thing. They've had situations where the customer Xeroxes a picture of what they want, and they print out, they write the address of where it should get shipped to on the Xerox. They fold it up and they mail it here. And then they just expect them to do everything else because they're not allowed to say like,
wow.
Yeah. So the compliance loves them. Yeah.
So we've discussed migrants, drugs.
Wow. Yep.
Very topical conversations
Yep.
right now. Efficiency. I feel like in your position, you have a unique perspective on what's going on in the world, in the U.S. right now, and with regards to efficiency. Do you see a place for ADS to assist the current administration, the DOD, in their goal of becoming leaner, becoming more efficient? Where do you see ADS in that?
Well, I will tell you, and it's, I get excited when you start talking about that because I don't think a company is better suited to assist the transition that the federal government is going through right now. I mean it when I say it, but let me maybe sort of talk to you about why. So after that 2 years of cold calling and getting hung up on, I wanted a little bit more of a stable existence, income-wise. And so I found a consulting firm, small place, very, very, sort of form-fitting to my background. A lot of Navy customers, Navy IT, Navy logistics kinds of customers. I'm like, well, that's pretty. That sounds comfortable. And so I did that for 5 minutes, and then my biggest client, they were getting rid of all their contractors, and they were going to create a GS position. And so they wanted me to have that. I took it, and I was a GS, a Govy, for 5 years in the Pentagon on the Navy staff. And if I was still that person, I'd be sweating right now. Because I think I saw very closely that there is a lot of inefficiencies. I think every significant department, every staff in the federal government would benefit themselves to do an efficiency study. Again, these are political topics, right? Especially right now. Like, I don't know maybe if the Doge is going about it necessarily the right way, but I think their intention is probably not bad. Because you look at how frustrated our customers are every day with they can't get what they need. They can't just buy, oh my gosh, I mean, Jen and I have like pounded our head against the wall so many times about the level of constriction that is happening right now on procurement in the Army alone. Army's by far the worst, unfortunately, right? And I'm hoping to see that pendulum swing back relatively soon. Depends on what happens in the world. Depends on what total force management's going to, say to the structure of the Army. But I think that there are some customers where we have gotten in front of them and tried to position ourselves and DLA as the sustainment contracting strategy for the programs that they're managing. It always amazes me, the customers that have never heard of us or the vehicles that we have. And I get excited. I get excited whenever that scenario happens the same way I would get excited when we would play a terrible opponent in basketball, because I'm like, I'm going to play a lot tonight and I'm going to score a lot of points. Like that's how I feel whenever you find a customer that doesn't really know about what we do and doesn't really know about the TLS vehicle. And, I think that if they diverted a lot of the acquisition of things like operational equipment to vehicles like the TLS program, to the companies that are recognized experts at it, with the years of success that this company has, and as good as we are, and the resources, even as a small company, the resources we have to bring to bear to customer problems. We do it every year. We're doing it now. We'll continue to do it. Like, for somebody to shine a light on that right now, if there was a way for us to do that, and we're certainly thinking about ways to do that, that is how we could, I think, be involved in and be sort of a solution. I think the efforts by the Department of Government Efficiency they're looking at it maybe a little too top line. They're looking at it with maybe too much of a bias. Like, there's just too many people in government. There's a lot of people that don't really even work. They're just sitting there coming in, making coffee and collecting a paycheck. And, they have that attitude. I think that might be a little too extreme. My sister is a Govy. She's a government employee. She works for GSA. She's a lead contracting officer on a large software software development contract. So she's definitely very safe when it comes to the cuts that they're talking about making. But she's really worried.
So you were a GS employee, a civilian contractor,
a Navy civilian. Yeah.
A Navy civilian.
Yeah.
What were some of the inefficiencies that you were seeing specifically? I know Jen and I have a unique perspective on some of the inefficiencies that we've seen when we were on our expeditionary team with the MilCon process.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
can't even
what
imagine.
about you? Do you recall some very specific examples of inefficiencies?
I do. And they were bureaucratic inefficiencies. So our office was the resource sponsor. So that's like we own and scrutinize the budget. And it was the budget for all of the large logistics enterprise IT programs. So like the Navy executed the largest purchase of software licenses in the history of the world at the time, whenever they decided to move all of their infrastructure to SAP. And so the program was called Navy ERP. And the amount of acquisition paperwork, SES level 3, 4 approvals that you needed to get in order to just have a budget that was executable, and the time that it took to go through that. The GS 13, 14, 15 full-time employees whose only purpose in life was to help manage that paperwork process, to me, was a waste of an FTE.
And those are highly paid individuals.
Especially in the DC area, relatively highly paid. Not most of the year weren't working a full-time job. When you had responsibility for the budget, that was, my time in the Pentagon was also very enriching, because, you got to work with the end user, right? So the fleet. So they're saying, this is the requirement. We have the requirement, and this is what we need the system to do. Then you worked with the technical authority, which is the program office. And so the program office says, well, this is what we're going to have to do to build that capability, and this is how much money we need to do it. And so then we, owning the checkbook, you become at the time, because they were software programs, you become sort of a shade tree expert in how do you perform software development. Like, okay, you're telling me it's going to cost $5 million to develop this capability. Well, then you start learning about things like agile software development, and you start learning about open architecture systems and things like that. For lack of a better way of saying it, to call their bluff on, because everybody's going to pad their budget, and so you whittle them down to, like, this is really all you're going to need, because guess what? We're all taking 10% budget cuts. They just went peanut butter spread across all the different departments. We got to figure out a way where's it going to come from. So you need to figure out how to get this capability written into your plan and executed and developed within the next 2 to 3 years with this much money. And they always say, I don't know how it's going to work, and then they always figure out a way to do it. So, yeah, that was my experience there. Is it an awkward transition there? I don't know if I answered the question or not.
You did.
I think we all can offer up 3 or 4 dozen examples of government inefficiency, and that. But again, I think I agree with you that perhaps the way it's being handled might be.
And that's
cutthroat.
That's why
a chainsaw, where perhaps just,
a chainsaw.
I don't know, a kitchen knife might work.
A kitchen knife or a scalpel.
I don't even know if we need a scalpel, but
a really sharp paring knife would actually be the perfect way to do it. I think there are very good places that would bear prudence to look at finding manpower savings. Again, it's the way that they're doing it that is causing concerns. It's why my sister, who is very good at what she does, has a very relevant, valid job, is still scared that she's going to lose her job and her health insurance for her family, because she's not confident, nor are a lot of folks, that they're making cuts with the right criteria. And so that's what I see in my experience, my opinion as well, is that, like, we got to be really careful what we're doing here, guys. There's certainly an opportunity to save money, 100%, and put it in other places, but we can't break anything.
Which, honestly, it's why we exist, right? It's why ADS exists, because we're doing it in a way that we're helping the government save money. We're helping the government be more efficient. We are helping our customers identify those areas where perhaps they aren't super efficient and where they can redeploy forces. So I do feel like we are fighting the good fight, obviously from an industry standpoint, from a commercial standpoint, but it's awesome to be able to be a part of that.
No, absolutely, you nailed it. I mean, like, we are always a value add to the government customer, but the more they whittle things down, the less people are going to be available to get the warfighter what they need. And that's why we exist, 100%.
Yeah, personally, I've seen throughout the MILCON process, a process, the military construction process, a process that can take 5 to 7 years to get customers exactly what they're looking for, and by that I mean buildings, so infrastructure on bases or overseas, and we're uniquely positioned to be able to offer a solution that is very quick in juxtaposition to that MILCON process. So I do think ADS is uniquely positioned, particularly in that arena, to be able to provide an alternative.
I mean, how much fun is it when we meet with customers and tell them what we can do, and they go, "Wait, that's real?"
Yes, I know.
The best feeling ever.
Is it illegal?
So, I know, exactly. It's such a good feeling. But
Will we get to do drugs afterwards? No, that was just the Navy.
That was just the Navy. Right. Only on Sundays if there was no tasking. But I mean, I think honestly, like, when you think about something that is as burdensome as the MILCON process, maybe instead of looking at, like, cutting people, how about changing the laws? How about changing the way they administrate the money?
Groundbreaking.
How about looking at that for a hot second? Yeah.
So just kind of pulling back up to your time at ADS, you've been here now 3 years? 4 years?
4 will be 5 in November.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service, ma'am.
So what advice, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
One would be, what advice would you have for anyone, whether they're coming out of the Navy or coming out of college or just in general, for someone that's starting their career and thinking about sales?
Starting their career and thinking about sales. Well, everybody's different, right? Some people like to sort of, wade in and gradually learn their skills. Other people like to jump in with both feet and just take the beatings, and it usually gets easier.
Which one
I'm on the
are
ladder.
you?
I'm the ladder guy. I'm the ladder. Just let me just take my hits. Let me take the shots, and then I'll hopefully, as long as I'm still standing afterwards, I'll figure it out, kind of a thing. Get to a company that is relevant and extremely busy. You don't want to go to a company that is trying to find a purpose. Find a company that's got great training programs. I think that ADS, it had a good training program when I first got here, but like that department has grown and improved by leaps and bounds. And I think that the way we have things set up now, the way we train our folks on not just sales techniques, but also resources, even public speaking. I also would recommend they do, this is just anybody going into industry out of the military, go to a few Toastmasters meetings. One of the best things I ever did. The most uncomfortable thing, right, at first, but like really, really good idea. But yeah, go find the company that is, all right, they got a valid need, they got things happening, they're not going to go away anytime soon, so they're stable. And then what's the onboarding process look like? Am I gonna go to a place where it's a really specialized thing and I'm gonna be just sort of a one-trick pony, or am I gonna have the opportunity to sort of broaden my skill base? I think with the way while we are a focused acquisition solution for the warfighter and the first responder, we do it in so many different areas that makes us one of those places. I think as we try to diversify our revenue streams, folks getting involved in those kinds of things. I'm speaking more specific to ADS right now. Sorry, it's just muscle memory reflex. I think, just to answer your question, somebody getting out, find a place that's got a well-established infrastructure for training and onboarding and is moving in the right direction. So that means either stable or growing real fast. That's where you want to go. Those are the best experiences.
All right, this is my last question, and I feel like this has been awesome talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you could distill your leadership philosophy down to one sentence, I mean, you've been on high-performing sports teams. You were in the Naval Academy. You've had a lot of different leadership roles in industry. Obviously, you were an officer in the Navy. If you had to distill your leadership philosophy down to just one sentence, what would it be?
Oh, man. I wish you had told me that one before I walked in here.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Okay, so it's a sentence that can evolve. It can be a lot of sentences.
I've already thought there's going to be an and in the middle of it, right? So I can put two thoughts. Your people matter more than you, and don't be afraid to do the work.
Love it.
That's it. Off, catching me off guard.
Ryan Sturgill, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah, this has been
This
much fun.
This was a treat. I did not. This is the best way. I would like to do this every Friday if we could.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll pencil it
Let's
in.
start in it. Let's start off. Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan, so much for joining us today, and
Thank you.
we will see everyone on the next episode.